Getting to the heart of the matter. Back to Guy, Ben, and Frank with more Inside the News.
Welcome back to our next segment of Inside the News. Glad to have you with us. Welcome to all of our affiliates across the country. You listening out there as well. Thank you so much on AUN TV and also on YouTube. Frank Vernuccio, top left. Ben Brunson, bottom middle. My name is Guy Wehman. Okay, Ben, take off where Frank was, and we're going to then introduce the Paris Climate Accords. But even in the off break, you were on a roll, and I hated to stop you, but it's like, we got to talk about this on the air. Ben, go.
Well, it's amazing. What I was stating during the commercial break between us was that if you look at all of these issues that have driven the left over the last decade or more, they are based on anti-science. They are based in many cases, if not all cases, on fabricated data, fabricated studies. The whole Russian narrative was based on a fabricated dossier produced by Christopher Steele and his minions. The East Anglia study, which was the basis of the entire climate narrative of the last 25 years. And it had the infamous hockey stick of global warming. Those numbers were all fabricated. That's not a right-wing opinion. That's accepted scientific analysis of the East Anglia study, and so much is admitted by the author of the study at this point. We're just talking about hydroxychloroquine. The entire narrative was altered and changed the history of COVID-19 based on fabricated data, left-wing fabricated data to try to debunk the use of HCQ. And it succeeded. What's amazing is how much of this succeeds, and we still continue on a climate narrative that does not look at the reality of the numbers. We have not had global warming in the last 30 years. That's just the reality of the analysis. The oceans aren't about to flood the state of Florida, and as a result, Barack Obama's $15 million mansion 100 feet off the ocean in Martha's Vineyard is safe for the time being.
All right. Frank, why is it? Why is it that they love the anti-science? Why is it that they're perpetuating this? And I think we all know the answer to this, but why is it that the left is so insistent, or the progressives or the elites, I don't know what term you want to call it, but why is it that they keep pushing these narratives, Frank?
Well, the answer, unfortunately, is obvious. Their position simply isn't viable. It doesn't make sense. It's kind of like socialism, which is the fad of the day in politics, particularly among the young. For over a century, in every continent, in every type of country where socialism has been tried, it has been a disaster. It has led to increased poverty. It has led to increased authoritarian government, lack of personal freedom, yet it's still being pushed. If you are going to push that point, you can't use precedent, you can't use facts, you can't use science. You have to make it up, because the facts, the science, the reality doesn't go in your favor. It's the same thing with global warming, which is now accepted as absolute biblical truth among the left. And yet the numbers make no sense whatsoever. We're still coming out of the little ice age of the last millennium. As Ben pointed out, there has been no warming for decades. If you look at the data at the time of the Norman conquest of England, the data is clear that the earth was warmer then than it is now. If you look at the time of the Caesars in ancient Rome, earth was warmer than it is now. There is no scientific data proving any of the points about global warming. And so when you still want to hit a particular issue, when you want to advocate a point, you have to make it up. You have to lie. And we saw this most vigorously in the last election. A Steele dossier in the 2016 election was used to attempt to defeat President Trump. It didn't work. But in the 2020 election, the media conspired with the Democratic Party to warp the news, to hide reality in order to win the election. And of course, as we're going to see, I think very clearly in the next couple of months, one of the things they hid most definitely was the mental incompetence of Joe Biden.
Let's talk about that because I want to get into some other points here. The why of the Kamala Harris. We'll kick that down the road here. But even in our discussions off the air and pre-production over the weekend, it has been brought up by both of you that President Biden, his appearance looks not good. His remembrance is bad. I mean, he couldn't even remember the name of his Secretary of State, nor what the shape of the building was that the Defense Department is in. It's called the Pentagon. It's got 5 sides, penta meaning 5. Ben, go.
Yes, our leader, the leader of the free world, the President of the United States, the most powerful person on planet Earth, is declining rapidly. He was in bad shape before he took office. We all know the impact that the presidency has on anyone who occupies that seat.
Yes.
It ages you quite rapidly because it's 24/7 of nonstop stress and demand on your mental capabilities and your physical ability. You have the entire world demanding your audience 24/7. So it's a nonstop flow of issues that you have to deal with. And you have to be at your best to be able to keep up with it. Barack Obama handled it quite well. He was young and fit. Donald Trump, for an older man, handled it pretty well. But we have a president right now who cannot handle it mentally, and it is showing on the decline. And whenever he varies off of the teleprompter by even a word or two, he immediately gets lost. It's quite apparent, and it's quite apparent that we will see, I think, little and less of him as the weeks and months go on through this year. And this issue of no press conference is going to stretch into an issue of where is Joe Biden, because effectively, he's not up to the task. So we have the Biden-Harris administration, which I think will soon be the Harris administration in reality.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, about Kamala Harris meeting with foreign leaders and all of that coming up on more of Inside the News. But we want to thank you, AUN TV. That was Ben Brunson, the author of the Falstaff, Enigma, and Esther, Sling. You can find those books, Amazon.com, benbrunson.com. Frank Vernuccio is with the American Analysis of News and Media, the Minute Report for America. You can find more about Frank and all of his trips back into the world of the Caesars back in the day, and at usagovpolicy.com. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News. Here's Guy, Ben, and Frank.
Welcome back to Inside the News. Glad to have you with us. Frank Vernuccio, top left, Ben Brunson, bottom middle. My name's Guy Wehman. I'm on the top right. And our radio affiliates across the country, we thank each and every one of you. You've gone through some trying times, even with the cold spell. Some of you have been off the air. We've got notification of that. We are glad that you are back, and that as you care for your people and disseminate information on a community level as well as a national level in your broadcast markets, we are behind you 100%. And Frank, Ben, and I, we are here ready to assist you. And if you ever need that, and we'll go to Biden's closet and grab a bunch of cash. Okay, Frank, we've got to talk about Kamala Harris here, because this leads into or follows what we were just talking about. She is now meeting with foreign leaders, not President Biden. And not only are they prepping her to be in that spot, she's going to be president. In the next 4 years, she will assume the presidency, just for the mere fact that Joe Biden is not going to be. We've had other presidents that have failed, I think polio and things of that nature in the office. But this is maybe one of the worst, because it's the mental dementia type of stuff here of Joe. I mean, Frank. I mean, Ben. Frank.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, if Albert Einstein lived to be 120, he would still be mentally competent. Joe Biden, let's be blunt, throughout his career, it was evident the man was not very bright. He lost one of his prior presidential campaigns because he was plagiarizing someone else's speech. He's never been a paragon of intelligence. The level to which he has descended from that relatively low level of competence to begin with is frightening, as Ben said in the last segment. The State Department is very precise in its use of language, and they don't really change very much at all. So in prior administrations, whether it was the Trump administration, the Obama administration, or the Clinton administration, they would always talk about the Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Clinton administration. State Department releases now talk about the Biden-Harris administration. That's not just a slip of the tongue. It's not just a minor change. It is significant in that the Biden administration itself recognizes that Joe Biden is not really in control. Part of the reason you have a president who is the most visible individual politician in the country is that the American people understand where this man, or I guess in the future, this woman stands. Now you have a coterie of behind the scenes bureaucrats who are really running the show. And that's a slap in the face towards the whole concept of democracy. We don't really know what the mindset is of the people who are behind the throne, the people who are really making policy. We can understand a Joe Biden or a Donald Trump or a Barack Obama. Do you really understand the mindset of all the bureaucrats who are putting words and papers in front of Joe Biden to simply sign while he's at least competent enough to sign those papers?
Okay, Ben, let's get to the point here where Kamala Harris has been by Joe Biden's side on every photo op that we see, and she's meeting with these foreign leaders. And well, let's just talk about that. And then I want to talk about the Taiwan-China issue maybe a couple minutes down the road. But let's just talk about that here, Ben.
She makes a great secretary. She's usually there to remind him to get his mask or piece of paper that he left on the podium as he started to walk away, or to point him in the right direction, since he's usually confused at the end of any of these small press events they have. Look, the one thing we know from history is that weak leadership begets disaster on an international basis. The Soviet Union correctly assessed that Jimmy Carter would not react if they invaded a neighboring sovereign country, and that prompted them to go into Afghanistan and take it. Putin correctly assessed that Obama would not react if he invaded the Crimea and seized it and annexed it, and then invaded the Donbass. Hitler correctly assessed that Neville Chamberlain was not going to react when he invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. And those are all correct assessments. And the weakness of those respective leaders prompted despots to take advantage of the situation. And we're going to have that in spades. We have a very weak president. Everyone knows it, despite the strength of the US military. It's led by the president as commander in chief. And he will soon be replaced, most likely, by Kamala Harris, who has zero executive experience or international experience of any type, and does not exactly pose a striking figure when it comes to leadership.
Let's dovetail with what you just said here, Ben, because when you said about all those leaders and about Putin and knowing what's going on about Carter and all and Obama, that they do their research. They know the people maybe better than some of the American people know them, because they've got the spies inside. So they know those traits. Just like when you see the movie Patton, they understood what George Patton was all about. They understand what Rommel is all about. Well, Putin fully understands what Biden is all about now, don't they, Ben?
Look, strength is a very effective deterrence. And the knowledge that people will wield that strength and the belief that they will deters people from doing things that are aggressive. The Russians had no doubt about Ronald Reagan's willingness to use the US military, and it deterred them from doing anything ambitious. We have the opposite now, and we have China that has coveted Taiwan and the reunification of Taiwan, and has, I think, come to the conclusion that the only way it will happen, unlike Hong Kong, where there's no deal on the table that sets a time limit, the only way it will happen is they're going to have to invade Taiwan militarily. And I'm very fearful that the Chinese will attempt to take advantage of this current administration by invading Taiwan, because I'm quite fearful as to where that could lead in terms of global conflict and the impact on the world. So we're in a very dangerous time, and it's a danger that is driven by weakness in Washington, D.C., right at the top of our country.
You know, Frank, that kind of brings us back to that comment that Obama made when he was saying, well, don't worry about it. We'll fix it after I get reelected, when he was making that comment to the Russian leader at the time. And I'm wondering if Kamala Harris is doing the same thing when she's meeting with these foreign leaders. Don't worry about it. I'm going to be president. We'll handle it then.
Well, let me give as a special bonus to the audience of Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio what the headlines are going to look like if China does indeed go into Taiwan. The Biden administration will scream and yell and do absolutely nothing. And the press will award their most meritorious headlines to the Biden administration, saying he kept us out of war, which of course is the same thing that the British press did to Neville Chamberlain when he gave in to Adolf Hitler before the start of World War II. This reality that this combination of the press supporting anything that the left does, and the left's complete weakness, indeed possible sympathy for America's enemies, is going to be the prelude to a major change in world affairs, possibly leading into another world war. It is indeed that serious. Consider the mindset. China's takeover of Taiwan, if it occurs, doesn't end there, because the impact on Japan, on South Korea, on Vietnam, on the Philippines, and indeed Australia, New Zealand, will be a complete lack of confidence in American leadership. They will have to judge what's in their best interest, and that could possibly be breaking away from alliance with America and going towards the Chinese. It's that serious.
Wow, we've got a lot yet to talk about. I want to talk about the immigration policy and what's going on down in the southern border here, and Ben's going to tackle that when we return. This is Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio Inside the News. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio Inside the News.